Yo, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name's Jody Sedrick, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And I tell you, man, sometimes, some weeks, some days, some months, some years can really test your mettle as a husband, as a father, as a man. And I I think a lot of times we don't have a space where we can talk about that in a productive way. And so I'm super excited because I've brought a longtime friend on to be my guest. His name is Jeremy Loque. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jody. Hi,
Yes.
everybody.
So Jeremy is he lives in paradise. He lives in Hawaii. Uh,
Yes,
he's been a firefighter, a detailer. He's now a financial planner and going through some changes in his life. And
yes.
it's I think a lot of times everybody thinks, oh, he lives in Hawaii. Life is paradise for him. So it's all
When you wake
sun
up,
and beach, right?
when you wake up in the morning and you look outside, yeah, it's great, And then when you go to the supermarket, it's a different story. Um, but it is what it is, and it's you got to be grateful, regardless.
Yeah, there really is power in gratitude, especially when you go through a season of challenges.
Mhm.
Prior to you and I getting online, I was telling you, the last 4 years of my family's life have been extremely challenges. And I've shared some of it, but some of it I haven't shared because we still haven't completely moved through it. And I also want to be respectful of my son's story as well as recognize that it's my own story. But I think one of the drivers behind me having this podcast is I want to be able to have the conversation with men like you and other men because so many times we haven't created a safe space for us men to talk about the heavy things that are weighing on our heart, our shoulders, our mind, our soul. And sometimes we feel alone.
Mhm. Yes.
And one of the things that caught my attention and that kind of was the motivator for me to reach out to you was you did a post on Facebook and you were sharing how your daughter was asking you about death. So you guys have had a loss in your family. Your father-in-law passed away this year, and so condolences and love to you and your family first of
Thank you.
all. But how did you navigate that discussion of death and loss with your daughter?
Um, I think this started a few years ago. We at our old house we had dogs. We had three dogs, and they all actually, that was another thing that happened last year is our 15-year-old dog passed away too, and um, he was ready to go. So he lived a good life, but um, my daughter understood um, the things that come with life and death. From our dogs passing away and those situations. So she was exposed to it relatively early, and she understands that life isn't forever, and things aren't always perfect, and as far as like dealing with me and my situations, and then when I come home from work and I'm uh a little down, or things happen, um and like I can't even count how many times I've done CPR on people and things like that, and it doesn't seem to weigh on you until you're able to kind of leave work and, I guess, re-enter the regular world. And I think a lot of those burdens, especially from the really tough ones, she picks up on. So she asked me, a question about it. while we were driving from my parents' house to mine, and the insight that she had when it was related to life and death, and understanding the process, because I know that a lot of times kids are so joyful about so many things, and they don't really have that in them to um, how can I even say, like, relate to things ending, like death,
Yeah.
or things like that, and they're so just innocent and in the moment that it's um it's crazy. It's crazy how when she started talking, and she says it, she doesn't say somebody dying, she always says somebody passes away or passes on,
Yeah.
which you're like, um but just her insight in general. And I think it's from one, knowing what I do, understanding that I help people, and sometimes people don't make it out of that situation, and our personal stuff. So it wasn't really like I sat down and talked to her about it, because there were so many instances where it was a um, it happened, and we had to get through it, and she did. And I remember our first dog passing away, she cried for a long time. um, but I kind of let her grieve for it, but then she didn't snap out of it, but she came to terms with it, and she was able to move on from that. So I was very impressed with her ability to do that.
Yeah, there's a key thing. There's allowing our kids to move through it, right? Because I think a lot of times we have an expectation, especially when it comes to loss, that you're going to go through a mourning period, right? And that mourning period can be so random, right? Because it could be somebody that you were expecting to die, it could be unexpected, it could be, I remember, my cousin, he overdosed when he was 26, and they literally took him to the ER, cracked his chest open, and massaged his heart for 3 hours.
Right.
And he ultimately, passed away. And um, my aunt was wrecked for years, right? And I can't even imagine what it would be like to be a parent to lose a child. I mean, just the very thought of that really touches my heart, right? And I remember, kind of watching years later my aunt still working through the loss of her son. And in the back of my head, I'm going, why isn't she over it yet? Right. And that was so judgmental. It was so uncaring. It was so unempathetic. And when I thought it, I mean, the moment I thought it, I'm like, wait a sec. Who are you to judge?
Right.
Who are you to set a time limit on how long her grieving process is? The other thing that touched me about that, about what you shared, is that a lot of times these experiences with our kids, they happen when we don't expect them. Right? It's driving down the road, or it's working in the backyard, or you're picking them up from school and you can see that something's bothering them, or something's on their mind. And I think it's really, really important that we as dads create an environment where we can have those discussions on a moment, right? They're not the best discussions with your kids, are not orchestrated. They're taken advantage of when they have a question that is weighing on their hearts. And it's our opportunity as dads to have that conversation with them at the moment that they need it.
Yeah.
So looking back, it's interesting, that you said that you appreciated her perspective. I'm curious, what is it about her perspective that touched your heart as a dad?
Sorry. um,
Okay.
it's I think it's because of my own geez, wow, that hit me kind of interestingly, but we all have our own responses to things. And I think when something like this, that is such a topic that is not discussed, or we try to shade our kids from because it's such a, it's like a gut wrenching topic. Uh, and nobody likes to talk about it. And agreeably so. Nobody likes to discuss it. And, you know, we're taught as men and people, especially in our position, sometimes, in fire, we got to swallow it. We got to stomach it. And, somebody asks us that, oh, is something bothering you? You usually just say, I'm good. Just give me a second. I'm good. Uh, and you think you are until, things come up, and it's like getting hit by, like an emotional truck, like how I am right now. It hits me in weird times. And for my daughter, like when you asked me about what was so um, interesting for me, is for my daughter, is that she was able to understand it and not compartmentalize it.
Mm,
She was able to voice her understanding of it and not say, I it didn't bother me. She's able to bring it up and talk about it and be comfortable with it, and not feel have that feeling of, I can't talk about certain things, or I don't want to look vulnerable. It's not in her. you know
yeah.
if something's bothering her, she's going to say it. And that's something that I appreciate a lot, because I don't I don't do that. And it led me to, kind of where I'm at right now. But I'm learning. I think that's what we need to do as fathers, and as men, is understand that being vulnerable isn't being weak. It's being weak if you want other people to feel bad for you. That's a difference. Like when you're trying to be vulnerable to get pity from somebody else, that's a different shift than being vulnerable and wanting to fix yourself from it and become stronger and be more well-rounded and help others. And that's kind of where I went through that circle. I was in that position where I didn't know what to do. I was so just engulfed in this uh, pity me, I guess, feeling. And I realized that, a lot of the stuff that, I experienced made me who I am. And this is me. And I don't have to feel like I have to stomach it for somebody else's opinion, or this is something bothering me. I'm just going to get it out so I can fix it, and I can move on from it, because I'm not the only one who's dealing with something like this. Somebody else might be. Then maybe I can go help them, or maybe I can go help, somebody else, or whatever it may be. It comes from a place of wanting to help rather than focusing everything back on me. Does that make sense? I
Yeah.
hope I didn't
No,
ramble too much
it
about
makes
it,
a
but
lot of sense, right? And especially, I think, you've been a first responder for so many years, and we have so many men and women that serve in the military, right? And you men and women carry a special burden that you have chosen to do, right? And
Mhm.
people outside of that don't realize the things that you've experienced, seen, felt, and experienced, right? It's beyond their walk of life, right? And so I think a lot of men, and that's why we have 22 a day and things like that, right? Because so many men are carrying heavy burdens on the heart, but they don't have an opportunity to talk about it. I was really blessed in that. And just like your daughter, she obviously feels very comfortable with you. that says a lot about the relationship that you and your daughter have, that she can say, "Hey dad, I want to talk to you about this heavy subject," right? And I remember when my father passed away, I about 3 months before, I just had the strongest impression that I needed to extend a business trip and go spend a couple days with my dad. And that has been one of the best decisions of my life. I took the extra day or two, flew into St. Louis, and I drove down to Arkansas. And my dad, literally, we sat in the living room all day, and he had 80 foot of oxygen cable connected to his nose. And literally, if he walked from the couch to the dining table, he was out of breath, right? But we had such a beautiful conversation about life, about my kids, about my family, about his family, my siblings, and how much he loved us, how much he hoped for us. And I'm so grateful that I had that time, right? And then fast forward to June that year when he passed away. We all gathered in Arkansas. My dad said, "Look," he goes, "I want you to celebrate my life. I don't want it to be a big, morose, sad thing. You guys, I want you to come together, celebrate my love, and celebrate the love that you have together, that me and mom created as a family. And I want that to be an extension of my love." And so we literally, after the funeral, went out to the lake, brought out 3 boats, and we had a barbecue and water skied, and we actually did a slalom salute. I bought some masks. I had some masks made. My brother put on my dad's mask. I had a mask that I was holding with the little paddle, and he's pulling me on the boat because my dad always drove the boat. And my dad was a killer slalom skier, and so I'm got the mask up, and we do a big old rooster tail, tribute to my dad, and I think, if we can have those kind of conversations with our family, it makes those events more meaningful as well as less awkward.
Yes.
Because everybody's like, "Man, what are you guys doing?" I'm like, "Look, dad wanted us to celebrate. He didn't want us." And yes, we're having our moments of tears, but overall, we're viewing and respecting the life that he lived.
Yes, absolutely. I totally get that. That's awesome. That's awesome that you guys are able to do that. And like you said, not many people do because it feels awkward. I think it feels awkward because, I don't, to be honest, I don't know why. I think it's just ingrained in us because us as humans, we're able to look towards that. Like animals aren't able to really do that, like to grieve in the
Yes.
same way and affect our mental capacities and our abilities to cope with certain things. And even to this day, I have issues with some coping mechanisms, and it's individualized. It's like everybody has their own way of doing it, and it just seems like some people want to be able to tell you, okay, you need to mourn a certain way, and it seemed like everybody just caught on to the same way, and we all had to be sad, and it is a sad time, but like you said, it's a celebration as well. Like we are honoring somebody who passed away and gave us all these things, all these lessons, all these times, all of these things, and we want to focus on that part of it rather than the loss.
Yeah.
So you're 100% right on that, and it's a choice that we all can make. And for me, and we go back to me talking about my daughter and our situation and our conversation, is that I don't want to tell her how to act when certain situations comes up. I want her to figure that out. I want her to figure out if she wants to mourn a certain way or if she wants to be happy about certain things. And I think I come from that point because I'll be honest, and to me, I'm pretty messed up with my emotions and the way I react to things as well. And we don't want to ever tell each other or ourselves that something might not be right. Um, And I think that's when my healing started, was when I was honest with myself and said, there's something going on that when you wake up in the morning, you're not happy. And I looked at everything and it said, it's not nothing outside. It's not my wife. It's not, she's awesome. It's not my daughter. She's awesome. It's not my family. It's not the brothers that I work with. It's not them. It's something else. And, I looked at myself in the mirror and I realized that it's me. I'm just, I needed to fix the way my brain works. And I'm learning now, because I'm getting help, that when you do have PTSD issues, it rewires your brain to stimulus and to different triggers. And it made sense after that. So when we have situations where it is traumatic and it's consistent, or it's, even if it's just one, it can completely change the way you look at life. And I think for me, I suppressed that way too long. I wish people would come out more and just say, you know what, I had an issue with that. Something affected me greatly. Like you mentioned about your aunt as well. Her translation of that incident probably was because everything that she looks at triggered it,
Yeah.
and it's a lot harder for her to move on from it. And it's okay not to move on from it, but just to be able to understand it.
Yeah. I think the process of moving through an experience, right? And it's not just death, it can be
No,
tragedy and trauma in your own life. I look at,
right.
what my family's gone through the last 4 years, and I can finally see light at the end of the tunnel. But those first 2 years, man, I felt there were moments where I felt abandoned by God. Straight up, I felt, in fact, there's one particular experience that I felt completely alone. And I'm very blessed because me and my wife have a great relationship, right? But there was an experience that I'm still carrying on my own, right? And I have come to the conclusion over the past 4 years, especially, is that we can either allow the fire of those experiences to refine us or consume us, and we get to choose. The challenge, it's easy to be consumed
Yeah.
because you just give up and take it, and right now I just give up, throw in the towel. But when you go, you know what, I'm going to take this experience and I'm going to look inward and go, all right, what do I need to become through this process? What things am I holding on to that I really need to let go?
Yes.
So many times we're carrying baggage, and the baggage that we're carrying is not making room for a gift that God is waiting to give us, and He's waiting for us to toss the garbage out.
Hmm.
And it's tough because it's easy to hold on to what we've known
Yes.
and step into the light, but taking that first step is you're stepping out of darkness into light, and sometimes the darkness becomes comfortable. And
Yep.
the question is can we use that experience to go, all right, what do I need to become, and how do I cast aside that which is holding me back?
You know, it, I think one of the things is understanding what step to take.
Mm,
Most people don't know what step to take because they know that through either stigmas or through what they hear, they're like, oh, I don't want people. It's always external. It seems like it's always some kind of external force that's stopping you from taking the steps that you need to go to. Like for me, a big one is wondering what people thought. And it's like they don't. I'm not accountable to them. I'm accountable to the people in my house. I'm accountable to my family. I'm accountable to myself. So if I have an issue with something and I want to go address that issue through whatever means possible, I don't care what you think of me or what he thinks of me or what she thinks of me or whatever it may be, because this is not your problem. This is something that I'm having trouble with. I'm comfortable enough to tell myself, you need to get this fixed and let's go figure out what to do. And trust me, I still do it to this day. I have sometimes some things come up and I have a hard time dealing with it, and I put it in my pocket, or I put it on the side, and I think that it's going to disappear, but again, it's about addressing what's really the problem. And a lot of times what holds us back is that one thing, that worry about some kind of external factor. And I think a lot of times it's because of social media, and because of our egos, or our identities that we're trying to build for ourselves, stop us from becoming that, instead of being 100% true with yourself and saying, you know what, I'm not the best at everything, but I'm okay with that, and I'm willing to work on what I need to work on to get better. And if I fall down along the way, so be it. That's part of life. But nowadays everybody's knocked down for being wrong or making a mistake, one mistake, rather than being like, okay, well, he made a mistake, he fixed it, right?
Yeah.
So once you get to that point, like I got to that point where I was like, you know what, I don't care about anybody else. I wrote down exactly what was important to me, and I made those things important. And it's a struggle daily for me. It's a daily struggle, which I still fight with. But I feel like you said, the support factor, knowing that you have people that are willing to kind of put up with your BS for a little bit because they know that you're working on it, and be able to kind of reinforce you when things are, when you're working through those things. And I think that's the biggest thing. And if we don't reach out for it, we're not going to get that. You're not going to get that support. People
Yeah.
are just going to you're going to alienate people, and you don't want to do it. You want to find people in your life that you're willing to, you're okay with talking to, and trusting. And it doesn't have to be your spouse. It could be your brother, or somebody that you work with. And it's about building that relationship up, pretty much dropping the egos down. That's the biggest thing, I think, for us in the fire service. If you ask me, I don't know if it's true or not, but the egos of looking like that something's wrong with you, that might be one of the things that stops a lot of guys from saying anything. You know.
And I think that that is a real issue, right? I heard a great
Right.
comedian today talk about how for years she has had a subject that she did not want to talk about in her comedy. And she goes, I realized that I finally had to address it. I have a mental issue. And knowing that doesn't make me less. It enables me to know how to move through my life because I have this mental issue.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times, like you said, we're so worried about what other people are thinking that we're not doing what's right for our family or for ourselves. I mean, my wife, years ago went through about 3 years of severe depression, right? And in my mind, I'm like, well, you just kind of work through it, you pray about it, you work through it, you get counseling if you need, but medication, dude, my
Mhm.
mind completely changed through that experience because I'm like, we have to do some naturals to get your body, your chemistry back on track. And a lot of my reticence initially, and hers too, was what's the stigma attached to it? Right. And
Mhm.
we as men, we have to recognize that the emotions that you're feeling of loss, of trauma, of hurt, of love, of happiness, of excitement, of joy, of sadness. All of those are human emotions.
Mhm.
They're not assigned to women, they're not assigned to men. We all experience them. The difference is we as men haven't been taught how to deal with them. We've been taught to push them aside, buckle up, get to work, and solve the problem,
Mhm.
but never solving the problem about ourselves that is a raging hurricane in our hearts and in our minds. And until we have that
Absolutely.
discussion, we can't grow.
Absolutely. I think that, a lot of people look back at the men of old, of like the last generations, and it's that those people seen way more things than they did now. It's like, that's true. A lot of the situations that they were in, which is war and a lot of different other things, they were in different situations that maybe had more traumatic. But you got to remember the dynamic of the world and the dynamic of the conversation that people were having with each other, and the support that they all had for each other, and the togetherness and the ability to come home and have some support factors, have people there, have whys, have, and don't have those consistent stimulus of negative things and um, judging and all of this stuff coming in, like what social media does to us. It was a different time. You did things based on your family, your community, your sense of purpose. And nowadays is like there's such a disconnect between just people in your community, your family sometimes, and your friends, and everybody's fighting with each other nowadays. So now you're fighting with yourself, and now you're fighting with others, and it's like there's no place where you feel like you can buckle down and be like, you know what, whatever just happened, I know how to handle it, because you don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that even makes sense what I just said, but
No,
I
no,
feel,
it makes perfect sense, right? There,
yeah,
having a sense of purpose and of community, of being able to rally around each other. We tend to be so divisive, and it's like over little things that don't
yeah,
even matter, and it's like,
yeah,
dude, it's like, let's just give each other a little bit of grace. Let's give each other a little bit of room to
yeah,
move through these experiences, because I think a lot of times we get down on ourselves because we're not succeeding, or we're not winning, we're not, achieving what we wanted to, and we go, man, why am I such a failure? And fail to recognize that it's the first time you're going through an experience. So guess what? You're gonna trip, you're gonna
yep.
fall, you're gonna have to learn, right? So give yourself some grace to move through the
Hmm.
process.
That's a good point. I remember growing up and being told to do something and not being told how to do it, and me having to figure out myself doing it wrong and getting yelled at and getting, and you learn that way. And that's how we learned before. And I think it was even more like that before, because people wanted you to make a little bit of mistakes. They
Yeah.
wanted you to be put in positions to figure it out yourself. Nowadays, it's like you can't be put in that box. So now when there's a problem that comes up, you're like, oh, I can't talk to anybody else because I gotta figure this out and I gotta get it right. Because if I get it wrong, then everything is a mess. Sorry, excuse me. I got some allergies today, but that's how I look at it now. And that's why I let my daughter make controlled mistakes as much as I possibly can. Because it's like, you're not gonna learn from it if I consistently have to do it for you, or somebody else has to do it for you. It's not going to be like that forever.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I love that, man. Dude, you and I can keep going. I want to be
yeah.
respectful of your time, but kind of, if you were going to give one or two tips, advice to men, what would those things be?
Um, I don't want to say like drop your ego, but find, I guess, find people that you align with, that will not necessarily understand what you're talking about, but be there for you when things are bad. And what I mean by be there for you, even if you don't talk to them every day, they know that, or that they support you. Find people that support you in whatever you do, and support them back. At least to the most of your ability. But build yourself a supportive network that will not only support you. I'm not talking about a support network that's going to coddle you. I'm talking about a support network that is going to tell you, like I have certain people that I call that will not deal with me feeling sorry for myself, and they'll give me controlled words that will snap me back into place. And I'm grateful for that, but I built those because I put them in certain situations. So find people that are going to be there for that for you, and don't be afraid of making mistakes. I guess that's what I would say. If there's
I,
something that you're trying to do, don't worry about making mistakes or what other people think, because at the end of the day, they're not accountable. They don't pay your bills.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to visit, to have a heavy discussion, right? And it's the discuss. These are the kind of discussions that I think we as men need to have, right, in order to help all of us grow. I mean, I think a lot of times we feel like we're shouldering it. I mean, when I started this podcast, there were so many. I kept hearing so many stories of missing dads and bad dads and deadbeat dads, and I'm like, man, there's got to be men out there that are trying to be good fathers. And I specifically started this podcast to try to find men like that. And it's amazing how many you find when you start looking for them. And the experiences that they've shared, the insight, they've touched my life. And I get, I had somebody reach out to me this week and say, "Hey Jody, can I bend your ear? I have some things that I don't have anybody to talk to, but I've been listening to your podcast. Can I talk to you?" And he and I had like a 50-minute conversation, and it was great, right? So I want to
Yep.
thank you for taking the time to visit with me. It's been a great conversation. So
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, I know that we missed each other a lot too. Um, I've been, dealing with a lot of stuff too, but I want to
uh,
be able to support others and the best that I possibly can. Sometimes social media is weird with that. Like I won't see people's posts for like months, and then all of a sudden I'll see it. It's weird, but
I know it's such a weird thing.
it's weird. But I mean, I just want to know that I let you know that I'm grateful for you guys. I'm grateful to meet you guys, and it's just funny how the world works.
Yeah,
How people meet each other and things. And what you're doing is awesome. Like this kind of dialogue and being able to talk to other people um, is great. This is something that is needed. And one more thing too, just to kind of end it from my side anyway, it's like I don't feel like I'm the perfect dad, and I feel like I'm far from it. But we all are perfect in our own ways. So if you're able to figure out and just be okay with understanding that you're perfect, however you are, but keep progressing and trying to get better. Don't try to compare yourself to somebody else, another dad down the street, because that's not you. Be the best that you can possibly be. And I think that's all our kids are actually really want, is us to be the best we can be.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. Those of you tuning in, thank you guys so much for joining me every week. I appreciate you taking the time. If you haven't checked out my book, go check it out on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Learn to dance with the currents of life when you feel like you're drowning. And please remember, like, share, and subscribe. And we will check you same time, same bad channel, just next week, right here on Father's Fire. See ya.
Hello.